What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the Dodge SRT Viper GTS Lightning Edition. So this is going to be the last vehicle available in this motor pass, and luckily leveling up this pass is going to be very easy. But getting this vehicle, you will have to hit level 37 and or buy the pass as well. So I have to admit though, this might be one of the best looking motor pass vehicles we've seen in a long time. I know a lot of players are probably big fans of most of the vehicles in this pass. For example, the free DeLorean is going to be a pretty dang good drift vehicle as well. Then obviously we have the other cars like the RX-3, which seems to be pretty decent, but also in a rival with the base version of this vehicle, which both of these seem to be really good in their own ways. And then finally at level 1, we're going to have the Celine S7, which is probably one of my favorite looking cars in the entire game. I love the body kit, plus the rims on this vehicle look great. But now taking a quick look at the car at level 37, I did notice immediately that the rims on this car are also going to be customized. Now, I'm sure everybody already knows this, but you really can't do much of anything to this vehicle. Now, a lot of players would like some type of customization to the vehicles that already have kits on them. For example, being able to like take things off the car or maybe change a few things around and really make it look a little bit different. But I have to admit though, I do think this Viper does look awesome. That wing on the back there looks really good. And the fitment of this body kit on this vehicle also looks really good as well. I have noticed some of the body kits can look kind of off, but luckily recently I would say most of them do look really good on most of the vehicles. I also love the carbon fiber on the back of the car with the taillights there. Then you'll also see that on the bottom splitter of the vehicle on the side there. Now, one of my other favorite things about these vehicles in this motor pass is the fact that the rims on these cars look so dang good, guys. I mean, I would love to be able to customize rims like this in the game as well. Now, one thing I did notice though is the fact that the rims on the Viper here are going to be, well, for the Viper, similar to the S7, so you probably couldn't customize Viper rims and then put them on a different vehicle. But being able to do something like this with the rims in the game, I think would be awesome. Like, for example, that blue line going around it with those pink bolts, as I did mention earlier, just looks so dang good on this car. I mean, everybody would probably like more rim customization for the most part, which I would say this motor pass did a really good job of that. But it would be really cool to see some other rims in the game and or better customization for them, because seeing rims like this on these vehicles, in ways it does give me a lot of hope that we could see some better rim customization in the future, but I guess only time is going to tell on that. Then moving over to the front of the Viper here, you probably notice this Viper being very wide because of the body kit, plus a lot of carbon fiber as well, which does look really good. And I wanted to mention this as well, guys. I really do feel like this is going to look like a Dodge Viper ACR, which I'm sure a lot of players would love to see this car added. But this body kit really does remind me of one a lot. I mean, it's kind of similar to it with the splitters and the canyons and the wing back there. I mean, I would love to see an actual ACR in the game, but luckily we have one that's kind of close to it for the most part. But who knows? Maybe we could see one in the future. Now, one thing I did notice about the interior, which I'm going to show more of this in detail here in a second, is the fact that the only thing I could find different about the interior in this Viper is probably going to be the blue stitching around it, which honestly does look really good. I feel like if they added some crazy colors to it, like blue and pink and all that to match the livery, it would most likely not look all that great. So I feel like what they did is very minimal, but it also looks really good for that matter. So I have to give them credit on that. At least they didn't overdo it at all there. But now moving over to the outside look of the Lightning Edition here, I think we can all agree every car in this motor pass does look really good. I feel like Ubisoft did a good job with all the body kits. This thing really is giving me ACR vibes as well, and it does look really good. I love the rims on this car. I love the overall look of it. Now the biggest question is, can this car perform pretty good and actually compete with some of the better street cars? So I will get into that more here in a second when I go over how this car really does perform in a race. But let's take a quick listen to that engine. And now moving over to the interior view of the Viper here. So as I did mention before, they only did the blue stitching in the vehicle, which honestly was probably the best thing they could have did. I do think this car does look really good. I love the carbon fiber on the vents there, obviously on the steering wheel. I would say the overall design of the interior in this vehicle is probably perfect, and it's not really overdone like some of the cars can be. And now moving over to the top speed test on the Viper here. So I'm not going to lie, guys, I'm not really a huge fan of the regular Viper in the game, but after driving this car a little bit, I would say the Lightning Edition is probably going to be a lot better than the regular car. At least that's what I have noticed anyway. The acceleration on this car might be a little bit slower, and one of the factors of that is the fact that it's going to be a manual, so it's going to have that little delay when shifting, but To be honest, I don't think that's going to ruin this car in any way because it does seem to be really good still. Now, the top speed on this vehicle is probably going to be very competitive. When I was testing it out in some events, I noticed the car can actually get up to speed pretty nicely on straightaways, which I do think is going to help it a lot. So, moving over to the straightaway right now, I'll do the top speed test. Let's get over here. So as you guys will see right there with Nitro Chemist, the car can hit 245 to 246 miles an hour. Now do keep in mind though, 246 miles an hour is probably going to be pushing the nitrous way too much, so the safer top speed of the Viper is probably going to be around 244 to 245 miles an hour. I think would be the best top speed of this vehicle, which compared to some of the other cars we have seen recently, I think it's going to be very competitive. For example, the other RX-3 in the Motor Pass does about 245 as well. Then the base one does 250, which is kind of odd, but then again, it seems like a lot of the best vehicles do around 235 to 250 anyway, so I would say this car is probably going to be very competitive. Now, if you were to put this thing against like a Superleggera on a big race, you're most likely going to lose because that car can hit 262, which is honestly insane. Obviously, having other cars like the Porsche 911 GT is going to be a little bit slower, so that car could go against this one in some ways as well. So when racing the Dodge Viper, the first thing I noticed right off the bat is the fact that this vehicle's acceleration might seem a little bit slower than some of the other vehicles you might be used to driving. Now, when shifting the car, I did notice I could barely pass some of the NPCs in the beginning, which honestly isn't that big of a deal because obviously they're not going to be that quick, so you'll get by them eventually. And hitting your nitrous in between gears is probably going to help as well. But one of the other issues you might encounter with the Dodge Viper is the fact that this vehicle is going to be a manual, which I really love manuals in real life, obviously, but having that short shifter delay in this game might be a bit of a problem I have noticed. So if you guys are in manual on the Crew 2, you're probably going to notice when shifting through the gears of this car that the car is going to have a slight delay with it, which I do believe it's going to have that with automatic as well. So I don't think it's going to matter all that much if you were running manual and or automatic with the Viper, because either way the car is going to have that delay when shifting it. Personally, when doing some of the races with it, I did find myself shifting down a gear I shouldn't be in, and or I'd shift back into third to go around a turn. I feel like that was a sweet spot with this vehicle, but one of the issues is the car was not having the power I really wanted it to have when flying out of a corner like the Superleggera. Obviously, that's like the best car in the entire street class, but I was expecting the Viper to do a little bit better. Now, I wouldn't say the Viper is going to be a bad car because I did find a positive with this vehicle, and that's going to be the handling. I noticed the handling of the Viper is going to be really good. This car really does feel like it's planted. It can fly around the turns, and it's honestly really good with that. Now, the other thing I also noticed is this car is going to have really good brakes as well. I actually never touched the brakes in the settings, and when I hit them, I was like, wow, this car can actually stop a little bit compared to some of the others, where the brakes are going to be pretty awful even if you do adjust them. I would say the Viper is probably going to be top tiered when it comes to its braking power and or cornering. The only issue this thing might have is the fact that it really cannot get out of the turns quick enough and or struggle a bit. But even then, I was still having a really good time with the Lightning Edition. I did find the fact that the speed delay might hurt it a little bit, but I could still get around those corners pretty quickly when I was testing it out in one of the events. So I have to admit, I know this car might be a little bit slower than some of the others, but I do think the handling and braking is probably going to make up for that on some of these smaller track style of events there. And even on some of the longer events, I would say the Viper is still not going to be a bad car because yes, it might accelerate a little bit slower. The top speed of 245 is still going to be very competitive on most of the events. Obviously, if you guys were racing against like a Superleggera or something like that on some of the bigger ones, that car is obviously going to pull away because of the top speed being 15 miles an hour more. But on many of these smaller tracks, I would say the handling of the Viper is going to be really good. And I was honestly pretty impressed with it for the most part, so I'm sure a lot of players are probably going to be mixed on the Motor Pass, but I have to admit, when it comes to aesthetics, every car in this Motor Pass does look really good. I even like the DeLorean a lot too, even though that's a drift car, and even for being stock, that car was also very impressive as well. So I would say every car in this Motor Pass is definitely going to be worth a look if you guys might have been interested in them. They might not be the best in each class, but I do find them to be really fun to use. And not only that, these cars definitely look really awesome as well. But let me know what you think about the Dodge Viper GTS Lightning Edition in the comments below. And here are the settings I'm currently running on this vehicle.